Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.
Hello, I'm Simon Sladen, and it is an absolute treat today to be with one of the legends of pantomime. Many of you will know him from appearing across the stages in Scotland, but today, this year, celebrating 50 years in pantomime, it's the one, it's the only, it's the legend, Allan Stewart. Allan, thank you for joining us on this British Theatre podcast.
Legend. That's scary. Anyone calls you a legend, you know you have a lot left.
No, I mean, 50 years, that is legendary. There aren't many of the stars in entertainment or panto that do 50 years.
Well, it was funny, actually. Last night on the Royal Variety Show, they did a pantomime section, and they brought Biggins out, who said it was his 50th year, and Sue Pollard, her 50th year. So I was shouting in the room, I'm there as well.
Yes, 50 years. Exactly. We need the Royal Variety to get up to Scotland, don't we? I don't think it's ever been in. I don't think it's ever been done.
It was actually at the festival. I remember it. Must be going back 25 years ago, the Festival Theatre.
Well, we're going to talk about the Festival Theatre later because there's some very interesting, this latest chapter in your pantomime history about that. But let's start, maybe as all pantomimes do, with a good prologue, thinking about growing up and where everything began. I mean, how did you enter this wacky world of entertainment?
Well, I started very, very young. I started playing, I got a kit of drums, a snare drum and a hi-hat was what I got. And I started on the drums when I was about 8. And then I moved over onto guitar. My mum bought me a little ukulele. And then my dad said, what are you buying him that for? He doesn't play the drums anymore. And anyway, the ukulele started me off. Then my dad got a guitar down from the loft that he'd had for years, so on and so on and so on, until eventually by the age of 11 or 12, I was actually working, singing and playing the guitar. I was a git voc, as they called it in the clubs in those days. So I was working from 12, 13 onwards, and then all through my school, through my O-levels and higher, I was working 3, 4, 5 nights a week in the clubs. So I had a great grounding for learning how to sing to a noisy crowd and try to break through and find a comedy routine. So, that was how I started. So I've been doing it for a long, long time.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because it's very sad that many of our training institutions today don't have pantomime as a component or a module when it's the first thing that many, many graduates will go into, whether that's ensemble or one of the principal characters. But that training must have been great about just knowing what that viscerality of an audience is like. Let's politely say a good audience or a bad audience, warming them up, keeping them on side. But did I read correctly? You didn't go to panto as a child.
That's correct. I'd never been to a panto. I mean, I wasn't much of a theatre person because I worked in the clubs. All the acts that I knew were club acts. And even at the age of 15, my dad drove me down to Newcastle and we did all these really difficult Newcastle clubs. So then I got to know all the Dustin G and all the big names that were working in the clubs in those days. So theatre was not my thing. And consequently, it was very difficult for me to move into theatre because they want 7 minutes in those days. You know, what did you do 7 minutes? What? Sorry, I do 45. And so you can't do 45 in the theatre. And to change over to that way of thinking was very difficult for me. So by the time I did my first panto in 1975, which was at the Pavilion in Glasgow, I played Buttons. I had never seen a panto. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know the traditions behind you, ghosts, shouting. I knew none of it. All I knew was I was in a television series and they wanted me to be top of the bill in my first panto. So I went in and sort of really rumbled things up, as we say in Scotland. I really said, well, we don't have to do that. And they say, yeah, but we always do it. I said, well, I don't want to do it because I don't understand that, you know, and it worked really well for me.
And then did you get invited back there? What was that next stage around?
We did 3 years there. We did 3 years at the Pavilion and all of them were very successful. And then I decided that I've got to try another theatre. I didn't want to do it. I really wanted to go to the King's in Glasgow, but that didn't happen. So to tell you the truth, there's a little bit of a grey area after that, after those 3 pantos, which one I went to next, whether I went to England. I think I went to England after that because by that time my television series was showing in England. So I started doing some English pantos and that just carried on and on and on. And it wasn't until 97 that I put the dress on and became a dame.
Yeah, I want to keep in this moment before we graduate, or maybe dames aren't born, but they evolve, and talk about two people, Jack Radcliffe and Paul Elliott, both who sort of have been, I would say, quite key to those certain chapters of your career.
Very much so. Well, Jack Radcliffe in my very young days, from about the age of 10 till 13, he had seen me somewhere working. I don't know where. I think it was a charity ball or something. And he came and talked to my dad and he said, your boy's very talented. And he was the most incredible man. He was a gentleman. His clothes were immaculate. I remember him saying to me, son, never sit down in your props. That means you never sit in your suit because it gets creased. And I've always remembered that. So he then took me to, he was a big star in those days in Glasgow and Scotland. And he was going to corporate shows and theatres and all that. And he took me with him. He took me on to the Metropole with Jimmy Logan on a show called Jiminy Jack. So he really was instrumental because my dad knew nothing about the business. He was learning it as my manager, but he learned a lot from Jack Radcliffe as well. So he definitely was very, very important in my very young days. And just things that he would teach me how to walk on the stage and how to get to the microphone and how to hit them with something right away that would grab them, you know. I used to open with a song, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. I got a brand new pair of roller skates. And I used to skip around the stage in it. And it was the stupidest thing ever. But it was my opening song. And people who were sitting drinking would go, what do we have here? You know, so he taught me, bang, get out there, hit them right away.
Yeah, that's amazing. And of course, Paul Elliott, who was the huge Panto producer, you know, and many of us will have seen many years of the wonderful E&B Pantos all across the country. You worked a lot with Paul, didn't you?
I did, yes. The very first year I worked with Paul and Panto, I got a new agent who was very friendly with Paul, and they said, I want you to use this young boy in Panto this year. I'll be 21, 22 or something like that. And Paul said, well, who is he? He said, well, he's very big up in Scotland. He's on television and everything. Paul said, okay, I'll take him to Toronto. So I went to Toronto for my first Panto for Paul. And it was a big lesson because in those days, I didn't really know how to rehearse and I wasn't good. Learning lines has been the bane of my life, all my life. Still is.
Yeah.
Has been and still, it drives me mad. If I've got to learn a song, I start 2-3 months before. I just did The Wizard of Oz recently, and that's a massive song. It's about a 5-minute song, very wordy. I said, I can do this, but you've got to give me 3 months. And that's what I did every single day, walking around the streets, walking the dog, going over and over and over, so that when I walked into rehearsals that day, bang. But in the early days with Paul, I didn't know how to learn words, really. And we did a production run after 6 days of rehearsal. And he came in and I was terrible. I was useless. He took me aside and he ripped into me. I'm giving you a chance. This is your big chance to come into the big E&B circle of people. And you didn't. And I'm just standing there letting him batter me. And I then said the worst thing ever. It'll be all right on the night. Oh, my God, that made it worse. Because he remembered it from many people saying. And one night, there was a lovely comedian. He said, it'll be all right in the night. And when the night came, he was terrible. And Paul knocked on the door and said, it was the opening night and you weren't. And slammed the door shut. So I learnt a lesson from him that I've got to learn way ahead of the gig.
Yeah. Does it help because you write?
I've been with Paul now. We did 10 to 12 pantos at the Edinburgh Kings, where he wrote it and I wrote the comedy, and we'd sit down in my house, and I still speak to him now, and he says, these were the best days of my life. He said, come into your house, and we sat there creating the panto, and it was a great time, wonderful time for E&B, and kudos at that time.
Yeah, and of course, I think you at the Kings was the last panto he ever directed. Is that right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So very, very special in that period. And of course, you it was interesting hearing you talk about sort of being sent off into England doing these roles. I was looking up, Babes in the Wood with Les Dawson at the Mayflower in Southampton, Frank Bruno and Wyn Calvin, of course, in Nottingham and Aladdin, Danny LaRue in Plymouth. I mean, these were the number one shows. I mean, how was that? Obviously, the cost, I presume, some of them knew of you maybe. Were you allowed to perform in your Scottish accent? There's a lot of debates about that. So
I've never ever not been able to do my Scottish accent. I don't think it's a broad accent, I mean, so I don't think it was a problem. If I'd been talking like that with a Glasgow accent like that, and they see you by the way, and they wouldn't have known what I was talking about. Or even Billy Connolly broke the mold. There was no problem after Billy came along. Everybody knew Scottish accents, So I was quite. It was easy for me to go into England and work. We did one year, the Plymouth one you mentioned with Danny LaRue. Carl Hallman was top of the bill that year. Danny was guest star, but he still had massive billing. And Carl and I went out one night for dinner before. This was during rehearsals. And we had quite a lot to drink. Carl was the funniest man I'd ever met. And we roared and laughed. And on the way home, he said, "Oh, my God, I've forgotten my key." He said, "Don't, I'll climb over the back door and get in the back that way." So I left him. I go home. I get a phone call first thing in the morning. He'd fallen off the door and broken his pelvis. He was in hospital and obviously out of the Panto. So I didn't get my mate to run the 7 weeks with. So Danny then, they said, well, what we're going to do? Well, we just got a straightforward actor to play Aladdin instead of a comedy part. So they said to me, "Alan, you're going to have to step up to the mark and do a lot more comedy." So that was the case. The director put me into it a lot more, and I was doing sketches and impressions and all that sort of thing. And Danny LaRue, on the way home after the first night, phoned Paul Elliott. And Paul said, "Yes, hello, Danny, how are you?" He said, "I got one thing to say. Too much wishy." So he didn't like the fact that I was on as much wishy-washy. So that was Danny's line to Paul Elliott.
I love it. I love it.
Cut me. They needed the comedy, so I was there.
And in those moments, obviously you'd been doing Panto season after season. It was something you obviously loved and were doing. But was there anything in the back of your mind thinking, oh, maybe one day I will put on the frocks? Or the Dame is a great character. I mean, Les Dawson, Wynne Calvin, Danny LaRue, dames across that whole landscape of it. Were you getting that zest you're saying with Wishy, that wonderful opportunity to do more comedy and be seen to be doing more comedy?
Well, the interesting thing was, around about the early 70s, I had a couple of television series. One was called Allan Stewart Tapes, one was called Allan Stewart Show, and it was a cabaret venue. And the director said to me, "I think you should try and create, as in the Russ Abbott type of thing, your own characters." So I've got three characters. One was Simon, who was supposedly my cousin, very simple boy. The other one was the club manager. And the third one was my Auntie May. So Auntie May was created in the early 70s, and she was created by, there was a musical director in Scottish television, Ian Gourley, and I would go over to him to get arrangements done. And when you got to the door, you'd knock the door and the dog would start barking, and a woman would go, "Oh, Dougie, look, there's somebody at the door, Dougie." And she'd laugh like this, you see. "Oh, it's you, Alan." And when I decided to do Auntie May, or this character, I decided to do an impression of her. Now, she never knew that I was doing an impression of her. And Ian Gourley, as the musical director, never knew that I was doing her. But the rest of the musicals all knew it was his wife. And they used to piss themselves laughing at this, And I did an interview about 3 or 4 years ago. And I told the story. And a day later, a woman got in touch with me. She said, I'm Auntie May's daughter. She said, "I was in the house at the time when you used to come over." And she said, "That's a perfect example of my mother." So
amazing.
I can't even remember her name now. So anyway, that was how Auntie May was created. So it was a really easy transition for me to move into Dame. Sorry, on you go.
No, I was just going to say, it's that interesting character.
Littlewood was my manager. And he was putting a Panto on at the moment. He had David Essex and he had Max Boyce in Edinburgh, and they slotted me into it. And he said, "I think you should do Dame now." 1997.
Amazing.
So that was my first year. Yeah.
And so this character that had, I suppose, existed, lived, and percolated, got the opportunity to be. Was that the first time in front of a live audience as Auntie May?
No. Auntie May had done a lot.
She'd done a lot.
I would do it in shows, and I would do it live in theatres and things like that. And she was. What I found was, and I think a lot of people have said this, I could be funnier as Auntie May than I could be as Allan Stewart. I thought funnier, I think funnier things, and I'm much more spontaneous and more dangerous as Auntie May. I always have been. And it's funny, I think Edna Everage was one of those people that she wasn't really funny as himself. And even when he wanted to give somebody a bollocking in a show, or the sound man wasn't right, he'd get into Edna Everage to go up and give the bollocking because he had power that way.
Yeah, yeah.
I really feel I love comedy as Auntie May. I've always loved it. That's why this Dame is a dream to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Kings. And maybe go back, and is this right? 1989 was your first King's Panto, and you had the wonderful Anita Harris in there. Clean. Was that your first Panto, the Kings? 89.
You have done your homework.
I'm glad. I was speaking to the lovely Anita Harris recently because she's just been made president of the UK Pantomime Association, and she recalled that Panto with great fondness.
It was a great Panto. Yeah. Well, I wasn't supposed to be in that Panto. I was supposed to be doing the Dominion. I'd done Bristol with Jim Davidson the year before, and they then asked me to do the Dominion with Michael Barrymore and Frank Bruno.
Yeah.
And I'd worked with Frank as well doing Panto. And the management had asked me to do it, and about 2 months before, they phoned up and said, "Alan, I'm sorry, you can't do the Dominion with Barrymore." I said, "Why?" He said, he doesn't want you in it." This was Michael Barrymore. "Oh, doesn't want me in it." "Oh, well, okay. Well, what can I do?" So they said they would pay me because I was contracted. And my manager, Stuart Littlewood, said, "Well, okay, we're going to get paid. You know you've got the money, but I'll go out and look for another Panto." And I don't know how it happened, but up comes Edinburgh saying, "We're looking for somebody to play a bad robber along with Russell Hunter." So I got that call, and up I went to Edinburgh. And little did I know, we've got a saying in our family. It was my wife's father's saying. It's called random perversity. Don't think anybody else uses it, but it means that whenever you go, "Oh my God, what are we going to do? We've missed that train," or "the television series has been cancelled," or "this is done," something is round the corner waiting to take over that slot that's happened. And this was a perfect example of random perversity. Didn't get the Dominion, and I got Edinburgh, which started off this whole thing of being there for so many years. I did a couple of years someplace else, and then they brought me back, topping the bill in Dick Whittington, I think it was, 92 or something like that. And that was the real start of it. So it just went on and on and on. And here we are now, 32 years later, still working in Edinburgh doing Panto. Incredible.
Amazing. I want to talk about some of those wonderful sort of partnerships and people that you've performed with at the Kings. In 1998, Gerard Kelly and Grant Stott were in the cast. That wasn't Grant's first Panto at the Kings, was it? 98?
No, no, was that his first one? It could have been. No. He might have done one or two before.
Yeah, it was around that time.
Sure about that. But his first Panto had been with me in the Kings in Glasgow in 1993. He'd never done Panto before. He was a DJ, he'd never walked on a stage. And he was there with me and Christopher Biggins doing Dick Whittington. And he played the captain. So that was again the start of a very, very long relationship.
Yeah.
Almost wasn't, because we did a plate routine where I was standing at the side with about 40 plates in my hand, which I walked on. Somebody threw me one plate, I dropped the 40 and catch the one. That's the tag of the routine. And all these plates smashed. And I was standing at the side, and he was standing next to me, and he had a broom handle, and he put it between my legs, and I tripped over it. I didn't drop the plates. I don't know how I didn't, but he saw his life flash in front of him.
Yeah.
The end of his career flashed in front of him, he says, because he tripped me up and ruined the tag of the show. Anyway, I didn't, but I just looked at him as if to say, "You stupid." He still talks about it. So, so that was the start of me and Grant, but it was a bit later when he came into the Kings.
Yeah.
In Edinburgh.
That was the beginning of his villainous streak, maybe.
Yes, it was, yes. No, he came in as a prince in the beginning. A big daft prince, and many, many stories about how he was learning the hard way with Andy and I, because Andy Gray and I were doing that.
Well,
But anyway, to go back to Gerard Kelly, that was the only panto I ever did with him. He had been the king of Glasgow as far as his wishy-washy was. And we did one panto. I thought he was the funniest man I'd ever met in my life. We just had hysterics every single day.
Yeah.
So he was great. That was wonderful.
Amazing. Now we have to talk about obviously the wonderful Andy Gray, who you worked with many, many, many years. What was your first meeting? Was it on Panto? You obviously did sort of seen and knew each other, I presume, before. How did that all come about?
I didn't actually know Andy, and I hadn't been living in Scotland all those years. I moved to London in '86, so I didn't know Andy from City Lights, which was his big television show. And he was a big name up here, and he'd done the Glasgow Kings. And he told me after we'd been working for a wee while, he said, I got bad reports about you, and said, oh, be careful about him. So he said, I come in with a little bit of trepidation, not knowing what it was going to be like, but we hit it off bang right from the start. Because Andy, again, is one of those funny people. He had funny bones. His face was great. He could make any word funny. And he would always find one word, banana, or a number. It was always that. And then when I started writing for him, I would always try and find a word every year that would be his word.
Yeah.
So we did 20 years of panto together. And I unfortunately, I was with him on his very last panto just before he died. That was a strange one because that was during lockdown. And Michael Harrison, who, as you know, is now the new king of panto and king of musicals and king of everything.
Yeah.
I was very friendly with Michael. Have been, still am. We were going on holiday together. And he phoned me up. He said, we're going to put on a 1 hour panto in Milton Keynes during the lockdown. There's a window of opportunity, 6 weeks, and Andy's going to come down and we'll put this on. So we rehearsed it. And we did 10 days of rehearsal, and we went in. Claire Sweeney was in it, and can't remember who else was in it. It was a kind of a blur, this thing. And we get into the theatre, and we're sitting there with dress, doing the take, and we get the call to say Boris is closing everything down. The panto's closed down, and we go home.
Yeah.
Now, I had fallen off the stage and split my leg open, so I went home 3 days earlier than Andy. They stayed on to rehearse it because we were going to do it in April. Mm-hmm. I went home because my leg was in a terrible mess, and Andy stayed on. And in those 3 days, he got COVID. Now, another random perversity situation. If I'd stayed on, there's a very good chance Andy and I, working together all the time, I would have got COVID that he had. Anyway, he went home, and not long after, went into hospital, into a coma, and sadly passed away. It was a terrible time for us.
Yeah, really did. Especially all those wonderful times that you'd spent on stage, and you, Grant, and Andy, you were this terrific trio of the Kings, and it also meant that it's always had such an exciting and innovative panto narrative and feeling and that slight difference, but the interplay that you were able to have as Dame, comic and villain sometimes changed things up in the plot and the way things were, wasn't it? Obviously thinking about where you might fit, particularly Grant within that. Was he going to cross-dress maybe, or was he going to do something slightly different?
Yeah, well, for a while he was always villain. And Andy and I were like the double act, and he was on the outside trying to do everything he could to kill us or whatever. And Andy and I became either husband and wife, or we fancied each other, or we danced with each other. So a lot of routines where we did, what was the name, Torval and Dean's famous dance. We did that on stage, and we did, what were the two guys, the two Greek, the father and son, the Greek.
Oh, Stavros Flatley.
Stavros and son.
Yeah.
We did Stavros Flatley, we did them. So we did some wonderful routines. That's on YouTube, actually. It's very funny. And we did that, and Grant was on the outside. And then eventually, Paul realized that as a threesome, we were very strong. So we would then start doing lots of things together. Even though he was a baddie, he'd become part of the threesome. And that's where Grant really got to learn about comedy and the timing and the whole sort of thing. He wasn't just a baddie. So, we became this triumvirate, as they call us up here in Edinburgh, for quite a few years, very successfully.
And are there any of the titles, it's always that sort of $1 million question people always ask about Panto. Do you have a favourite title? Was there a particular production that is very, has fond memories for you? But, is there one that is particularly sticks out in terms of maybe a title because it affords the Dame something in particular, or one that you three together, you felt that was the year that was difficult to top?
I think as far as titles go, the first one I ever did in 75 was Cinderella. So it's a story everybody knows, everything about it. You've got the Ugly Sisters, and I played Buttons in the first one. I played Buttons maybe 3 or 4 times after that. And then probably the third, Jack was the first one I played Dame. Then about 3 after that, I became Fairy Godmother in Cinderella. And I think that's my favourite. I think most people will say Cinderella is because it's such a magical thing to do, play to do. The story's so beautiful. The princess, she looks lovely. There's the love interest, and then there's the baddie, and Fairy May is what I've been for a few years. I was that last year. And it is a great part. It really is my favourite part, I think.
And for those people that sadly have not yet got to see a Panto with you in, or let's call it the King's Panto, because at the moment you're just slightly not at the King's. How would you define one? What is that unique identity that it has?
Well, as you said earlier on, it's the first thing that kids see, and it's very important. I tend to, this may be wrong, but I tend to put my material to the older people. We've got the story for the kids, we've got the baddie for the kids, and we've got Jack or Buttons, whoever, there for the kids. But I'm out there to hit the gags at the older people. Certainly like Julian Clary in the Palladium. He goes for the older people.
Oh, yes.
Kids hopefully don't get the gag. So, yes, I think that's very important for a kid to realise that that's their first theatre that they go to. And I must have had 10 people come round to the stage just this year alone that say, I've been coming since I was 3, 4, 5, and here I am now bringing my children. And there's people that are actually bringing their grandchildren that came to see me right away back in the beginning. As a little girl came down from Inverness last week, and her carer brought her down. She's in a wheelchair, and she said, Allan, I was at your first Panto in the pavilion. And she comes every year. So it's a great, you build up an incredible following in Panto. And it had a bit of a dip. I think it was the 80s when they started putting in the gladiators and the people who were big names but knew nothing about Panto. So they would fill the seats, but they just didn't work in Panto. One who did work in Panto was Frank Bruno. He knew nothing about it, but he was wonderful. He called me Wishy because I was wishy. But if I saw him in the street now, he'd still call me Wishy. He never knew my name. It was always Wishy. Wishy, what are you doing?
Fantastic.
So he was fantastic. But yeah, we had a dip in Panto, and now it's back stronger than ever it was. I mean, the Palladium is sold out this year. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Palladium's celebrating 10 years, and what Michael has done in terms of investment on stage, technology, stars, the Palladium's been huge, since 2005 with McKellen doing Panto. It has this new, as you mentioned earlier, the Royal Variety having a Panto segment in it. We've got all these amazing things happening now, of which it's getting the respect that the industry always gave it, maybe not more widely outside of that. And so, that is very exciting. This year, there's over 260 productions across the United Kingdom. Many, many, many box office reporting their best ticket sales in history. So we're no longer looking at just like pre-COVID, we're looking at in history. And I think it was interesting hearing what you were saying about the Kings and the families coming back, communities coming back, because I suppose in today's society, Panto does offer us one of those opportunities at Christmas to be in a room together and enjoy something which maybe are coming few and far between as society evolves.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it. The millions that we take now, the figures are mind-boggling, and save theatre for the rest of the year, a lot of them.
Yeah. So
up here, when we moved to the festival, which you just touched on because the King's has been refurbed, we moved to a 2,000-seater, and it's a wonderful theatre. I love it. It doesn't feel like 2,000. It's a very warm theatre, but the roar of 2,000 people when you walk on is fantastic. The King's was 1,300 and was going down to about 1,150 now, I think. And it's I love the festival. I'm really looking forward to going back to the Kins next year. It will be great from a nostalgic point of view. I think as far as the press go, it will be the biggest panto. In fact, it went on sale. Pinocchio went on sale 2 days ago, and it's the biggest first day sales they've ever had in the history of the Kings. So it's going to be big next year.
Yeah, huge.
And we're back to 7.5 weeks as well, which is a long run.
Yeah, very long run. So festival theatre, let's keep with this notion of the family, because you've got Claire with you in the cast, haven't you? Andy's daughter, and that must be really lovely to have that sort of that sense of family still, and that continuing of his legacy, but in the wonderful talents of Claire in the show. She's done quite a few with you.
It's lovely, really lovely to have her on the show, and very nostalgic to know that she's there and watching us. And there's one little bit where I bump into Flesh Creep and I bang his arm and he goes, "My BCG." Now, there's only a certain age group that remembers the BCG, but that was Andy's line. And after we say it, we both point up to the sky like that, as if to say, "There you go, Andy. There's the line this year for you."
Yeah.
And we always do some little bit that's Andy's every year.
Yeah.
So it's very nostalgic to have Claire there. It really is great.
And of course, you've seen huge changes in the industry. We talked about that sort of slump in the 80s, but even in just the form of pantomime, this year Daisy the Cow is not two people in a cow suit. There've been lots of other changes. I mean, what are some of the biggest that you've noticed, or that you would think, gosh, that those have really changed since some of the early days, or even the mid days that we were doing panto?
Well, I mean, I was saying to somebody the other day, and they couldn't believe it, when I first did my panto, and for probably 2 or 3 years after that, there was one microphone sent to stage. And that's why Paul Elliott used to say, "Watch Mr. Stewart, he always makes for the centre of the stage, just do that and you'll be all right." And that's what I do, still automatically make for the centre of the stage to do everything, down the front. Anything at the back of the stage doesn't work. Comedy does not work at the back of the stage. And last year, I said to the director, this piece with this teddy bear, an animatronic teddy bear, which was similar to Paddington now. So somebody was at the side doing the voice and the working it. And the only place he could put it was right at the back of the stage. I said, "This isn't going to work." He said, "I've got no way of getting that chair on for you to sit on any other way. I've got to do it back there." I said, "It's not going to work." And it didn't work. And I had another moment where I was flying, and Auntie May, I was doing Auntie May, and I was flying in, and they said, "The only way we can put Foy is at the back." I said, "Well, this isn't going to work." I'm right back, and it's the strangest thing. You get on, get to the front of that stage. And these are things that young people don't learn. They might learn by doing it wrong, maybe 2 or 3 years, and then wonder why I'm not getting it. And another interesting one was, and I learned this from, it was in 92, the cat, the guy he was an old timer who was playing the cat in Dick Whittington. And his costume was stinking. He'd had the costume for about 30 years. It was oozing fumes from the vodka that he drank and sweat. And oh my God, it was terrible. And I had in my head that on my first entrance, I would walk on very slowly, tired, from the back of the stage, as if I'd been walking all the way from London to Edinburgh, where the streets were paved with gold. And I walked on and I got no applause. And I thought, this is terrible. And he said to me, I hope you don't mind me saying that. And he said, "But if you walk on slow like that, you'll never get applause. Walk straight on right to the front of the stage." Boom, there it was. So I learned something from a smelly old cat. And these are things that hopefully we hand down to the younger people that come in to the shows, like Claire or to Gail or whatever that. I mean, Gail's very, very, she knows exactly what she's doing on stage. You don't have to tell her anything. But for younger people coming in, they've got to learn these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, where else will you get to? And I think that's another fantastic and I suppose heartwarming thing about Panto. Because of the Christmas period and because of doing so many shows a day, you do become this sort of family and community, and there is sort of this quasi apprenticeship passing down of traditions, of histories, but also stage practice and business and how you do all of that. And of course, you've got Jordan in the sort of realm now of your regular casting as well. So that must be exciting to have that.
He's 7 years now, so he's really part of the team.
Yeah.
And things like as he came in very, very tentative. He didn't know, because he'd always wanted to play the Kings in Edinburgh. That was his dream. He'd been in Aberdeen, he'd been in Glasgow. And when he got the call to come down, Michael called him and said, listen, we want you to move in. And this was before Andy passed away.
Yeah.
So he wasn't coming in to replace Andy. He was coming in as well as. And he came in very tentatively, and we loved him because he's a nice, nice guy. And he's fitted in perfectly now. And Grant and Jordan and I sit in the dressing room before the show, interval, and afterwards we chat to each other. We're very close family. You become this close family for 10 weeks. It's amazing how close you become.
Yeah.
And then you go away, and we actually all keep in touch because we've got a WhatsApp group, and we Zoom sometimes. So we've always kept in touch, especially during lockdown. We had a weekly call with the Panto group when Andy was still there doing it. And we had a weekly call just to keep in touch, you know.
Yeah. Amazing. Now, you did mention earlier that Pinocchio is, biggest selling first day. It's just been on sale for a couple of days now. Is it also your first Pinocchio?
Yes, I haven't a clue what we're going to do. It's not a strong story. I actually Googled it last week, YouTubed it, and watched a children's version of it to see just what they did. And I don't actually really have anything to do with the story. But Ed, who writes it, has got a story. He writes the story and then passes it on to me, and we then work together. But the thing is, there's not a lot there. I know Grant's probably going to be the circus owner. I'll be Mrs. May Chiapetti, whatever her name is. And we will have Jordan as Jack.
Yeah.
And he's not happy that he's going to have to wear a false nose. He's not.
That's it. Well, it will. I'm sure it will grow and do many other things in the whole spate of the show with Wales and everything else. Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's quite episodic. Him going on his adventures to each place. But hopefully that provides lots of opportunity for you to do lots of comedy sketches and write new bits and pieces.
I've got to admit, this year the story is light. The story of Jack is light because this is the Palladium set and Panto, and you've never seen a set like it in your life. It's just lights. Oh, you probably saw that in London. But the set is amazing. But it's not your normal tiers and tables and chairs and little houses and doors to walk in and out. It's very stylized. And it works. But there are some people saying, well, there's not a lot of story. But the story's all there. We do everything that you would normally do. But it's very much more of a big, bright London type Panto where everybody does their own thing, And I have a feeling that Pinocchio will be similar to that. But we'll see. It's early days.
Just like Pinocchio himself, I'm sure that a masterpiece will be carved out of your working together, and obviously ideas are percolating, and I'm sure for future years, whatever's going to be announced after Pinocchio again. What is it going to be like stepping back into the Kings after the renovation? I mean, everybody has been looking forward to it for quite a while now, and that venue in itself was beautiful before. Obviously needed things doing to it, all the rest of it, but there must be a lot of excitement about those doors being open again.
There's not one person that says hello to me in the street or comes to the stage door that doesn't say, you must be looking forward to come back to the Kings. And I am, because it's just got all that nostalgia there. It will be very different backstage because there used to be two number one, number two dressing rooms. Now it's only just a number one dressing room, which I understand doesn't have a toilet in it, which I'm absolutely amazed at. You spend 40 million on a theatre, and you don't put a toilet in the number one dressing room. Anyway, I've been shouting about that and nobody's listened. So my dresser, Maggie, who's been with me for 15 years, she says, don't worry, Alan, I've found out where the toilet is and I'm putting a door on it and saying, this is Alan's ball. So nobody's going to be allowed in it. But that whole downstairs bit is going to be different. I think when you walk into the actual auditorium, you won't notice massive difference. You'll just be clean and crisp and carpets. And I think the same seats are staying and everything will be brought back to pristine. But it won't be different. The front of house will be massively different. The stage will not be raked. The backstage technology where the lights are, the sound, everything will be spot on, top rate. So that will be great to see all that. And I'm glad it's opening 3 months before, so all the teething problems,
Yes.
the toilets won't be backing up and all that sort of stuff that happens after a renovation.
And maybe a few little jokes peppered throughout the panto as well, I'm sure, about all of that. Yeah. I mean, that toilet joke writes itself, doesn't it? No number ones in the number one. So, Alan, thank you so much for spending time with us today. A couple of things as we obviously look forward to to Christmas and to 2026. Let's first have a think about any thoughts about where the future of panto might take us.
I don't know. I mean, just the production values since Michael has come in have become bigger and bigger and bigger because the sets, it might cost $1 million or $2 million for the set in the Palladium, but he gets 10, 15 years out of that because it then goes around the country. It goes to the Mayflower, it goes to Plymouth, all the big ones. So he's found a way of making that work, and we all gain from that because the costumes we have are magnificent as well. So I think that's the way it'll go, that the productions will get bigger and bigger. But we've got to we're different in Edinburgh. Our pantos are different from the rest of England. My dame is different. My dame is a woman. She's an old woman. I'm not a man in a frock. But Grant actually plays a man in a frock when he plays like the Wicked Queen or the Wicked Witch or something like that. So I don't know how long I'll be going for. I just don't know how long I'll carry on. I'm 75 now. I'm still running around that stage. And as long as I can keep running, I'll be there.
Yeah.
But I don't know how long that will be. Running, it can change like that.
Yes.
It can go, and I'll be coming on a scooter, an electric scooter, pushed on with my Zimmer.
I'm sure that the theatre will be very pleased for that plug for Pinocchio to definitely see you in that one. So what's 2026 bringing for you? We know that Pinocchio is bringing for, obviously you've got that on the cards, but do you have a nice holiday and a good rest after all of this?
We finish on the 11th, and on the 13th we fly to South Africa, Cape Town. My son, who's just had a baby, well, his wife's had a baby, and I'm a granddad for the first time.
Oh,
so he's only 3 months. They're all coming up tomorrow here to Scotland to spend it at Prestonfield Hotel, where we have everything's tradition. We've been doing Prestonfield for 25 years, and they're all coming up with his wife's family, and we're having a big Christmas. And then David has rented a villa on the beach in Cape Town, and again we're all going together on Famille. Everybody's going, and my new little Silver, my grandson, is going to be there. And we do that. Then I'm coming back, and then I just start doing ships and cruising and bits and pieces, and I do voiceovers, and I did The Wizard of Oz 2 years ago. Coming back next year. So there's lots of things that I do, but I am slowing down as far as the ships are concerned because I just don't enjoy going away as much. I've got my dog Harry and my beautiful wife Jane, my daughter Kate, and David. We go over to LA quite a lot. So I'm going to spend quite a lot of time going over to LA now. Jane is as well, although she's got a really successful business, so she can't leave as much as me. But I'm picking and choosing a bit more now. I've had enough of the traveling. Well, especially the traveling to work, not traveling to travel, but traveling.
Yeah, of course. Well, Alan, thank you so much in the midst of your run for giving us so much time to speak about your amazing career in the wonderful world of pantomime. See, Jack and the Beanstalk is still running at the Festival Theatre until the 11th of January, and there are still some tickets if people absolutely should go and enjoy that magic and mayhem of Jack and the Beanstalk there, starring Alan. Alan, have a wonderful festive period, a very Merry Christmas, and enjoy that well-deserved holiday at the end of it as well.
Thank you very much. And you too. You have a lovely time.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.